to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the quotes that came out of the mouth of Carl Banks, which basically sounds exactly like me when I talk about this topic, whether or not the New York Giants should take Isaiah Simmons or an offensive tackle. I think both options are very good. I try to be as unbiased as I can on this channel, but still give you guys my honest opinion. And the one thing that I love about this channel on this topic, I feel like you guys, probably at least 60 to 70% of you guys may not agree with me, but you guys at least respect my opinion. You show respect and at least see both sides of the argument. And like I've said all along, I think this is a 2-year problem, and I think the answer to this solution, there's really no right answer. The most important thing with this pick, like I've said several times, is the New York Giants get it right. They cannot miss on this draft pick, and if they feel like Isaiah Simmons is that can't-miss linebacker, and there's not a can't-miss tackle in this year's draft, they have to go with Simmons. But if they feel there's a can't-miss tackle along with a can't-miss linebacker with Simmons, well, then that's where the debate starts. In my opinion, a tackle is more important than a linebacker, and I think a linebacker is incredibly important. The New York Giants have not drafted a first-round linebacker since 1984, and the most ironic thing about all these quotes is that linebacker was Carl Banks. Carl Banks, of course, played the linebacker position. You think he would have more of a defensive mind, but even he, in these quotes, is saying that if they have a can't-miss tackle, it's hard to pass him up, and we're going to get into the exact quotes in a second. Now, you go back, you look at the history of Andrew Luck's career. Andrew Luck is out of the league at the age of 30 or so because of all the hits that he took early on in his career because the Colts couldn't protect him. You look at a lot of these young quarterbacks off of a draft from 2 years ago. Baker Mayfield struggled mightily because the Browns abandoned the offensive line. Sam Darnold has struggled mightily in large part due to the fact that the Jets don't have an offensive line. For a young quarterback to succeed and prosper, you have to give him the right pieces around him. I say it all the time with Eli Manning. The New York Giants, yeah, maybe they didn't draft an offensive lineman in the first 4 or 5 picks, but at the end of the day, they had a good offensive line for Eli Manning to prosper early on in his career, and a lot of his success is due to that. And you want Daniel Jones to get off on the right foot, and he's the most important part of this football team. Nobody would debate that. I completely understand how important defense is, but we're not winning any Super Bowls if we don't get Daniel Jones on the right foot. And we got to make sure we protect this kid and get him going, which is why I've been so outspoken about improving this offensive line at all costs. They did not do enough in free agency. Fleming's a swing tackle, and that's where the debate starts. And I would love to trade down if given the right situation. I've said that all along. The problem now is with the coronavirus, reports have come out that teams are not going to be able to see Tua at the same capacity that they would have at his pro day, and that may raise question marks, and teams may be much less willing to trade up to take that draft pick. Of course, as I've said also, on top of that, a number of these teams that previously needed a quarterback got him in free agency, whether it was Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers, et cetera, et cetera. So there's only 3 or 4 teams that even need a quarterback at this point in time. The Dolphins and the Chargers know that, and they may not be willing to trade up. So the Giants may be stuck at 4, which is where this comes into play. But let's take a look at what Carl Banks had to say regarding the topic of the offensive line versus Isaiah Simmons. And keep in mind, once again, that this is the last first-round linebacker drafted by the New York Giants. If they get the right offensive lineman, I don't think anybody is going to be upset, considering that they've bolstered the defense, Banks told WF fans Joe and Evan. And some people may debate that they didn't really bolster the defense. Some people are not the biggest fans of Blake Martinez or Bradbury. But they got younger, and I do think the defense will be better just for the simple reason these young players should get better in their second and third years. Obviously, there's no Isaiah Simmons currently on the Giants roster, but their holes have been filled. I don't know how deep those holes have been filled to, but they've been filled. So far he hasn't given you his answer. Then he later goes on to say, it's not often that an NFL team gets the lineman of their choice, continued Banks, and I think they'll have the pick of their offensive lineman just based on what's going to happen in the first 3 picks of this draft. And I agree with him there. I also have the belief that if they were to trade down to 6, they'd probably have the offensive lineman of their choice, but you can't force a trade. And sometimes you have to just, pick who you should pick at number 4. And that's what this debate is about, whether if they stayed at 4, what they should do. Then he goes on to say, an offensive lineman who's going to be there for Daniel Jones for the next 7, 8, 10 years, if he's successful, is going to prove better than an Isaiah Simmons. And that's taking nothing away from Isaiah Simmons. If they take a lineman, I understand the logic. And I agree with him. And I completely, I showed it in my video. I try to be as unbiased as I can on this channel. I showed it in my video yesterday. Isaiah Simmons is incredibly valuable. He'd bring a lot to the defense. No doubt about it. And if the Giants feel like they could get an impact tackle by trading back up into the first, by all means, go ahead and do it. Try to fill 2 holes in the first round of this year's draft. Or if they think one of these guys in the second round could really have a huge impact for that offensive line, go ahead and do it. But this offensive line needs to improve. Last year, their pass blocking didn't get it done. I mean, you look at this stat right here. The right tackle and the left tackle combined, Remmers and Solder, surrendered the most quarterback pressures in all of football. And some of that could be attributed to Daniel Jones. I always try to be fair. Daniel Jones, rookie quarterback, needs to learn how to read defenses. But take a look at this quote. Kevin Zeitler provided the steady play at the guard the Giants expected when they traded for him, grading above 70 as both a run and a pass blocker. The tackle duo of Nate Solder and Mike Remmers hasn't provided that same steady performance, however. Of course, Remmers isn't here anymore. Solder's 57 pressures allowed this season are 7 more than any other player in the NFL. And the 97 combined pressures allowed for the duo as the most in the National Football League. So the 2 tackles surrendered more pressures than any duo in the entire league. And when you got a second-year quarterback learning a new system and a third-year running back, you invested a second overall pick in if there is an impact tackle, which we don't know yet. Obviously, they thought Eric Flowers was an impact tackle. So I get why New York Giants fans may be scared to take that tackle. But if Dave Getteman feels like there is a can't-miss tackle in this year's draft, and we don't know, we're not part of the evaluation process, whether that's Andrew Thomas, Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wills, or Tristan Wirfs, I think the New York Giants are going to take him. Now, the question is, do they feel that way? 2018, you would have said the same thing about the quarterback position. They needed a quarterback. If there was a can't-miss quarterback, between Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, and Josh Allen, I think the New York Giants would have taken him. Obviously, they didn't feel that way. That's why they took Saquon Barkley. And if they feel the same way about the tackle in this year's draft, maybe they will take Simmons, I would think, if he's there at 4. But if they feel there is a can't-miss tackle, I agree with Banks. You got a second-year quarterback. You need to protect him. You need him to get better in year 2. You cannot have another Andrew Luck on your hands. A lot of quarterbacks that fail early on in their careers, it's due in large part to a poor offensive line. You look at the Steelers. Every year, the Steelers have the best offensive line in the sport. They build the team the right way. They also draft early with linebackers. So you could kind of argue on both ways there. But the offensive line is very important, especially when you're trying to establish a ground game with a guy like Saquon Barkley and, get Daniel Jones to take that next step forward year 2. The Eagles have a great offensive line. The Cowboys have a great offensive line. We got to get better in that department. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.